Hey guys, tonight we're exploring the profound philosophical musings of a mayfly. Specifically, one who's just emerging from the water on what will be both their first and final day of adult life. Picture this delicate creature, wings still drying in the morning light, suddenly struck by the realization that this sunrise they're witnessing is simultaneously a beginning and an ending. Their existential insights might just mirror your own thoughts about time, meaning, and the curious weight of knowing when things will end. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to hear in the comments what existential questions your goldfish might ponder during those long nights swimming in circles. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey through one thoughtful creature's philosophical exploration. You feel the first warmth of dawn on your newly emerged wings, and with it comes a peculiar knowledge that seems encoded in your very cells. This is it. This single rotation of the Earth, these 24 precious hours, contain the entirety of your adult existence. You're not dying, not exactly, but you are living within death's immediate neighborhood, close enough to borrow sugar, as it were. The morning light refracts through your compound eyes, creating thousands of tiny sunrises, and you wonder if perhaps you're actually experiencing more life than creatures who see just one. Scientists have discovered that mayflies can detect polarized light patterns invisible to many other species, allowing you to navigate by the sun's position even through cloud cover. But what good is superior navigation when your journey must conclude before tomorrow's dawn? You stretch your delicate wings, noting their gossamer beauty with a mixture of pride and melancholy. They're perfect instruments of flight, evolved over 300 million years to carry your species through countless generations of single-day stories. Yet you can't help but think they're rather like receiving a sports car on the same day you're scheduled to turn in your driver's license. The cosmic joke isn't lost on you. Other insects buzz past, going about their multi-day or even multi-year existences with what appears to be casual indifference to time's passage. A butterfly flutters by, and you know she might live for weeks, possibly months. Does she appreciate her wealth of tomorrows, you wonder? Or does abundance breed the same complacency that makes humans forget to notice sunsets until they're on vacation? You contemplate whether consciousness itself might be nature's cruelest gift when paired with such brevity. After all, your aquatic larval stage lasted 2 whole years, but you spent it blissfully unaware, munching algae and dodging fish without a single existential thought. Now, equipped with wings and wisdom, you're granted just enough time to understand what you're losing. The philosopher Epicurus argued that death cannot harm us because when we exist, death is not present, and when death is present, we no longer exist. But you, dear mayfly, exist in the strange liminal space where death's presence is as tangible as the morning dew on your wings. You are simultaneously living and pre-grieving, celebrating and mourning. Yet as the sun climbs higher, warming your thorax and activating ancient instincts, you begin to sense something else. Perhaps the knowledge of ending doesn't diminish experience, but rather distills it. Each moment arrives pre-weighted with significance. The dance of light on water isn't just pretty, it's irreplaceable. The feeling of air beneath your wings isn't just pleasant, it's profound. You realize that creatures with longer lives might actually experience less life per hour, their attention diluted across so many days that individual moments lose their flavor, like tea brewed too weak. But you're drinking existence straight. No dilution, no rehearsals, no second chances to get it right. A peculiar lightness fills your tiny body, not the physical lightness that allows you to dance on air currents, but something more fundamental. The lightness of being unburdened by the need to build, to save, to postpone. Everything must be now, which means now must be everything. The lightness you discovered moments ago now meets its first test as you realize you must actually do something with this day. The theoretical acceptance of mortality is one thing, but the practical matter of choosing how to spend your hours presents an entirely different challenge. You find yourself paralyzed by possibility, hovering near the water's surface where you emerged. Watching the reflection of clouds drift across the sky, you'll never see darken twice. Every potential action carries an almost unbearable significance. Should you fly north, where the cooler air might preserve your energy longer, extending your day by perhaps an hour, or south, where the warm thermals make flying effortless but might accelerate your metabolism? The mathematics of mortality suddenly seem very real. You're essentially a biological hourglass, and every decision tilts the sand a little differently. A water strider skates by below, and you observe how casually it moves, secure in the knowledge of tomorrow. It doesn't hesitate before choosing left or right, doesn't anguish over the opportunity cost of each glide. You wonder if decision paralysis might be proportional to time scarcity, if perhaps those with the least time, paradoxically, need the most time to choose. Scientists have discovered that mayflies exhibit what's called predator swamping behavior, emerging en masse so that individual risk is minimized through sheer numbers. But you notice how this biological imperative towards synchronized action conflicts with your newfound philosophical need for authentic individual choice. Are you choosing to join the swarm, or is the swarm choosing for you? You finally force yourself into motion, if only because hovering in place while contemplating free will seems like a particularly absurd way to spend your limited hours. As you rise higher, you notice how different the landscape looks when you know you'll never memorize its patterns, never develop favorite perches or familiar routes. Every vista is both first glimpse and last look, every flower both introduction and farewell. The existentialist philosopher Sartre wrote about the anguish of absolute freedom, the weight of being condemned to choose. But he was writing for creatures with decades to live with their choices. You're experiencing something different, the vertigo of consequences that evaporate at sundown. If a choice can't haunt you, can it truly define you? A bee buzzes past, heavy with pollen, and you're struck by the purposefulness of its flight. It's gathering resources for a hive it will return to, contributing to a future it will participate in. Your own flights seem almost decorative by comparison, like someone test-driving a car they can never buy. Yet perhaps there's freedom in purposelessness, in choices made purely for their immediate experience rather than their downstream effects. You decide to follow the river upstream, not because careful analysis revealed any advantage, but because the very act of choosing feels like a small rebellion against the tyranny of limited time. If you had years, you might research the optimal flight path, consult other mayflies, perhaps even chart wind patterns across seasons. Instead, you choose with the beautiful arbitrariness of someone who won't live long enough for buyer's remorse. The irony doesn't escape you that you're spending precious minutes of your only day thinking about how to spend your only day. It's like those humans who spend half their vacation planning their vacation, except your entire existence is the vacation and checkout time is non-negotiable. As you fly, you notice other mayflies making their own choices, some dancing in elaborate mating displays, others simply drifting with apparent aimlessness. You wonder if they're all grappling with the same decision-making calculus, or if you're the only one cursed with this level of metacognition. Perhaps ignorance isn't just bliss. Perhaps it's also efficiency. A fish jumps nearby, and you instinctively dodge, then laugh at yourself for preserving a life that's already pre-scheduled for conclusion. It's like fastening your seatbelt for a car ride to your own funeral. But then you realize that choosing to preserve your hours, even knowing they're finite, might be the most authentically life-affirming choice possible. The Buddhist concept of non-attachment traditionally advocates for releasing our grip on outcomes. But what about when outcomes themselves have already released their grip on you? You're living in a state of pre-forgiveness, where every choice is already absolved by time's swift approach. You pause on a warm rock, feeling the sun heat your exoskeleton, and understand something profound about decision-making in miniature. Without the weight of long-term consequences, choices become purely aesthetic, selected for their immediate texture rather than their eventual impact. It's terrifying and liberating in equal measure, like being handed a paintbrush and told your canvas will dissolve at dusk. The rock's warmth seeps into your body as you rest, and suddenly you're acutely aware that you're forming memories you'll never have time to forget. This moment, this specific temperature of stone against your thorax, this particular angle of sunlight is being encoded into neural pathways that will exist for what? Another 16 hours? It's like writing in sand while standing in the tide. You watch a butterfly land nearby and wonder about her relationship with memory. With weeks stretching ahead, she can afford to let experiences layer and blend. Yesterday's flowers becoming part of a general knowledge about nectar sources. But you? Every single moment arrives already nostalgic, preloaded with the melancholy of its own passing. You're experiencing and remembering simultaneously, present and past, collapsed into a single point. Scientists have discovered that despite their brief adult lives, mayflies possess surprisingly sophisticated neural structures capable of spatial memory and pattern recognition. Your brain, tiny as it is faithfully recording every detail of this day, creating an archive that will never be accessed, a library scheduled for demolition before its first visitor. A cloud passes overhead, and you realize you'll never develop that casual knowledge of weather patterns that longer-lived creatures possess. You'll never think, "Oh, clouds like that usually mean rain by evening," because you have no pattern recognition built from repetition. Every cloud is both your first cloud and your last cloud, which makes it, in a peculiar way, the most important cloud in existence. You flutter to a nearby leaf and encounter another mayfly, and for a brief moment, your compound eyes meet. Are they also wondering about the point of forming memories with such a limited hard drive? Or are they simply living, unburdened by the metaphysical weight of temporary record-keeping? You'll never know, because even if you asked, neither of you would live long enough to become friends, to develop the kind of understanding that comes from shared history. The German word Augenblick literally translates to blink of an eye, but philosophically represents a moment of profound vision or understanding. Your entire existence is one long Augenblick, a continuous moment of clarity that never has the chance to fade into the comfortable fog of routine memory. You wonder if this makes you more or less enlightened than creatures who have time to forget their revelations. A dragonfly nymph crawls up a nearby stem, beginning its own transformation, and you're struck by a moment of temporal vertigo. You spent 2 years as an aquatic larva, but those memories are inaccessible now, locked away in a brain that metamorphosis has fundamentally rewired. It's as if you've already lived and died once, and this winged day is some kind of brief epilogue. Do those underwater years count as your life, or is life only what you can remember? You perform a small loop in the air just to feel the sensation, and realize you're creating what humans might call muscle memory that your muscles will never need to recall. Every movement is both practice and performance, rehearsal and closing night. It's absurdly inefficient, like learning to ride a bicycle during your only trip across a parking lot. The absurdity makes you laugh, or whatever the mayfly equivalent might be, a tiny vibration in your flight pattern. Here you are, faithfully encoding the precise angle of sunlight on water, the exact frequency of wind through reeds, the specific shade of blue in the afternoon sky, all into a memory bank that's essentially a biological Snapchat story set to expire whether viewed or not. Yet something in this seems profound rather than pointless. Your memories aren't tools for future navigation. They're art for art's sake. They exist purely to exist, to mark the moment, to say this happened, even if no one, including future you, will ever verify the claim. It's the ultimate form of mindfulness, presence without the possibility of mental time travel. A human child runs along the riverbank, and you wonder what it must be like to form memories, expecting decades to revisit them, to build an entire identity on the accumulation of remembered experiences. Does having more time to remember make the memories more valuable, or does scarcity create worth? Is your single day of memories more intensely felt than their decades of diluted recollection? The philosopher David Hume argued that identity is nothing more than a bundle of perceptions flowing through time. But what happens when time barely flows at all? Are you less of a self because your bundle is smaller, or more of a self because every perception burns brighter? You land on a flower, tasting nectar for the first and last time, and understand suddenly that memory without future is just another word for presence. You're not building a database, you're being a database. Every experience writes itself directly onto the surface of existence. No backup needed, no retrieval required. The sun continues its arc, and you continue accumulating experiences you'll never reminisce about, forming patterns you'll never recognize, learning lessons you'll never apply. It's beautifully pointless, like a song that forgets itself while being sung, a story that erases each word as the next is written. And perhaps that's the purest form of living, experiencing for the sake of experience alone. The flower's nectar, still sweet on your proboscis, you lift off and find yourself hovering near a spider's web where another mayfly has become entangled. For a moment, you consider attempting a rescue, then pause at the absurdity of the thought. What exactly are you saving them for? Another 8 hours? It's like performing CPR on someone in hospice, technically admirable, but cosmically pointless. Yet as you watch your fellow mayfly struggle, you realize you're confronting the fundamental question of purpose in miniature. If traditional purpose requires time to unfold, goals to achieve, progress to measure, then what can purpose possibly mean in a life measured in hours rather than years? You're essentially trying to have a career in a single workday, build a legacy during a coffee break. Scientists have discovered that mayflies play a crucial role in aquatic ecosystems, their mass emergences providing a vital food source for fish, birds, and other insects. Your purpose, from nature's perspective, might simply be to exist briefly and nutritiously. But knowing you are part of a food web doesn't quite satisfy the existential itch, does it? It's like being told your life's purpose is to be someone else's lunch. Technically true, but hardly inspiring. A damselfly settles nearby, and you observe how purposefully she hunts, each movement calculated toward the goal of catching prey. She has days, possibly weeks, to perfect her technique, to become an ever more efficient predator. You, on the other hand, emerged fully formed with instincts you'll never hone, skills you'll never improve. You're perpetually a freshman on the first and last day of school. The concept of telos, that Aristotelian notion of purpose or end goal, seems almost mockingly inappropriate to your situation. What is the telos of a creature whose end is preset at beginning? Are you moving toward purpose or simply moving toward conclusion? Is there a difference? You decide to attempt the rescue anyway, not because it makes logical sense, but because the act of choosing to help feels like a small declaration of meaning against the void. Using the tiny hooks on your legs, you manage to tear a small hole in the web, and your fellow mayfly escapes. They flutter away without acknowledgement, which seems fitting. There's no time for thank you notes in a life this brief. The spider emerges, annoyed at the damage to her web, and you feel a strange kinship. She'll spend hours repairing what you've undone, possibly days perfecting it again, all for the purpose of catching prey like you. You're both trapped in your own purposeful purposelessness. She, in her endless cycle of building and rebuilding, you in your single arc, from emergence to expiration. A group of mayflies performs an elaborate mating dance nearby, and you're struck by the realization that reproduction might be the only purpose that scales down to your time frame. You could, theoretically, mate and lay eggs in the hours remaining, completing the one biological imperative that nature seems to care about. But is perpetuating the species really a personal purpose, or just borrowing meaning from the collective? You join the dance half-heartedly, going through the motions while pondering whether biological drives count as chosen purpose or merely sophisticated programming. The dance itself is beautiful. Hundreds of mayflies rising and falling in synchronization, creating patterns in the air that exist for moments before dissolving. Perhaps that's purpose enough to add your movement to the larger dance, even knowing the music stops at sundown. The existentialist concept of project, as described by Sartre, where humans create meaning through their chosen undertakings, seems to require more runway than you possess. How can you have a project when you barely have a day? It's like trying to write a novel during a bathroom break, paint a masterpiece during a sneeze. Yet as you dance, something shifts in your understanding. Perhaps purpose doesn't require duration to be valid. Perhaps a moment fully lived carries as much purpose as a lifetime partially engaged. The human obsession with legacy, with leaving something behind, might be missing the point entirely. What if purpose isn't about duration, but intensity? A fish jumps through your swarm, swallowing several dancers, and you dodge aside with an agility that surprises you. Your body knows its purpose even if your mind questions it. Every instinct, every reflex, every behavioral pattern encoded in your genes represents millions of years of mayflies successfully living single days. You're not purposeless. You're the culmination of countless generations who found purpose in brevity. You leave the mating swarm, neither fulfilled nor empty, and perch on a warm rock to rest. The afternoon sun heats your wings, and you realize that perhaps the question isn't whether you can have purpose in 24 hours, but whether anyone can have purpose regardless of lifespan. The human with 80 years faces the same cosmic insignificance, just with more time to worry about it. A young raccoon investigates the water's edge, and you watch it learn, through trial and error, which stones are stable and which will tip. It has months years to perfect this knowledge, to build upon today's lessons. But does that make its rock-hopping more purposeful than your single flight? Or are you both just moving through space, pretending the patterns mean something? The joke of it all makes you perform a little aerial spin. Here you are, a one-day creature contemplating the meaning of existence, like a soap bubble writing its memoir. The absurdity is so perfect it approaches profundity. The warm rock beneath you suddenly feels less stable as another mayfly lands beside you, close enough that your wings nearly touch. There's a moment of mutual acknowledgement, a brief antenna contact that sends unexpected warmth through your tiny body. In a life spanning decades, this might be dismissed as mere proximity, but when your entire existence fits between sunrise and sunset, every connection carries weight. You both lift off at the same moment, not quite together, but not entirely apart, flying parallel paths along the river. It's ridiculous, really, this flutter of whatever mayflies feel in place of butterflies. What can love possibly mean when measured in hours? It's like trying to grow a garden during a lunch break, expecting roots to find depth in minutes instead of months. Scientists have discovered that mayflies use pheromones and specific flight patterns to communicate attraction, a chemical language refined over millions of years of evolution. But evolution designed these signals for creatures who would mate and die, not contemplate the nature of connection. You're experiencing the biochemical urgency of attraction while simultaneously aware of its futility. It's emotional inception, feeling feelings about feeling feelings. Your companion performs a small loop, and you mirror it without thinking, creating a brief aerial duet. For a moment, you're synchronized, two separate trajectories creating one pattern. Is this love? This momentary harmony? Or are you anthropomorphizing simple instinct, reading poetry into what's essentially biological programming? The philosopher Martin Buber distinguished between I-it relationships where others are objects and I-thou relationships where genuine encounter occurs. But his framework assumed time for encounters to deepen, for the thou to reveal itself through seasons of knowing. What depth can you achieve when your entire relationship must fit into the space between lunch and dinner? You land together on a leaf, and there's something almost comical about the attempt at intimacy. You're essentially speed dating at the end of the world, trying to compress getting to know you into get to know you before we both expire. Yet there's something pure in this urgency, love stripped of all future planning, all possibility of growing old together. You're already old, relatively speaking. This is your entire life's romance. A pair of dragonflies mate nearby, and you note with some envy that they'll have weeks to forget each other, to move on to other partners, to let this moment fade into a general sense of romantic experience. Your romance, should it bloom, will be both first love and last love, childhood crush and deathbed hand-holding compressed into a single afternoon. Your companion brushes against you, and suddenly you understand that perhaps love isn't about duration, but recognition. In this brief moment, you see another consciousness grappling with the same impossible mathematics of mortality. They're not just another mayfly, they're another being wondering what it means to be a mayfly. The mutual recognition of absurdity might be the closest thing to true intimacy possible. You dance together, rising and falling in patterns that feel both ancient and immediate. Your genes know this dance, have known it for millions of years, but your individual experience of it is heartbreakingly fresh. It's like hearing a song for the first and last time simultaneously, knowing all the words to a tune you've never heard. The practical part of your brain notes that mating now would leave time for egg-laying, for completing the biological circuit. But the philosophical part wonders whether reducing this connection to mere reproduction misses something essential. Can't two mayflies simply enjoy each other's company for a few hours without the universe demanding offspring? A water strider skates between you, breaking the moment, and your companion flies toward the opposite bank. You follow, not because of any grand romantic gesture, but because in a life this short, letting something potentially meaningful slip away seems like the only real sin. It's not that you have nothing to lose, it's that you have everything to lose constantly with every passing moment. You catch up, and together you investigate a patch of wildflowers, sharing the experience of discovery. Neither of you will remember this next week, next month, next year. But right now, in this moment, you're creating a memory together, even if that memory is written in disappearing ink. The temporary nature doesn't diminish the reality of the connection. If anything, it distills it to its essence. The Sanskrit concept of ksana refers to the smallest unit of time, the irreducible moment of experience. Your entire romance exists in a string of ksanas, each perfect and complete in itself, unable to rely on past foundation or future promise. It's terrifying and beautiful, like building sandcastles in a rising tide. A bird's shadow passes overhead, a reminder of how vulnerable your dance makes you, but neither of you seeks shelter. What's the point of playing it safe when safety itself is an illusion? If love is just elaborate risk-taking, then perhaps a mayfly's love is the purest form. Risk without the possibility of reward beyond the moment itself. You perform a synchronized loop together, and for an instant, you're not two mayflies, but one pattern in the air. Tomorrow, neither of you will exist to remember this, but right now, in this unrepeatable moment, you're writing poetry with your wings, creating something beautiful that the universe will immediately forget. Somehow, that makes it more precious, not less. Your companion eventually drifts away, drawn by some instinct toward a different part of the river, and you're left hovering alone again, contemplating what remains after such brief encounters. The concept of legacy feels almost satirical when applied to your situation. Humans build monuments, write books, plant trees they'll never see mature. You have perhaps 6 more hours to establish whatever mark you'll make on the world. A caddisfly larva crawls below, methodically adding pebbles to its protective case, building something that will outlast your entire existence. There's something both humbling and liberating in watching another creature engage in construction that exceeds your lifespan. You're like a tourist in the land of permanence, observing but never participating in the strange custom of leaving things behind. Scientists have discovered that mayfly swarms can be so massive they appear on weather radar, billions of individuals creating patterns visible from space. Perhaps that's your legacy, not individual but collective, not a name carved in stone, but a brief blip on a meteorologist's screen. You're part of a phenomenon larger than yourself, even if your personal contribution is infinitesimal. You land on a human-made fishing lure, mistaking it for another mayfly, and the irony isn't lost on you. Even in death, your kind serves as the template for deception, your form so essential to river ecology that humans craft imitations to exploit it. Is being worth imitating a form of legacy? Does it count if you're being honored by becoming bait? The sun has begun its descent, and you feel a new urgency in your movements. Not panic exactly, but an awareness that whatever legacy you're going to leave needs to happen soon. You've spent hours contemplating existence, but what have you actually done? What evidence of your particular life will persist beyond sunset? You notice a small spider web damaged earlier, presumably by your rescue effort, and feel a tiny spark of satisfaction. There's a gap in that web that exists because you existed. It's not much of a legacy, admittedly. No one will build statues to the mayfly who slightly inconvenienced the spider. But it's something, a small tear in the fabric of how things would have been without you. The Buddhist concept of anitya or impermanence suggests that nothing lasts forever, that even the most solid-seeming legacies eventually crumble. From this perspective, the difference between your hours-long impact and a human's decades-long impact is merely a matter of degree, not kind. You're just experiencing the truth of impermanence on fast forward. A female mayfly heavy with eggs passes by, and you're struck by the realization that this might be the only form of legacy available to you, genetic rather than cultural. Those eggs will hatch into nymphs who will spend 2 years underwater before emerging for their own single day of flight. You could be part of that chain, adding your genetic voice to the ongoing chorus of mayfly existence. But something in you resists reducing legacy to mere reproduction. Surely existence means more than just enabling more existence. It's the philosophical equivalent of a circular reference, defining life's purpose as creating more life to wonder about life's purpose. There must be something else, some other form of lasting impact. You fly past a child watching from the riverbank, her eyes wide with wonder at the dancing swarms. For a moment, you hover directly in her line of sight, and she points excitedly. Will she remember this moment? Will she tell someone years later about the day the river was full of dancing mayflies? You've become part of her story, even if she'll never be part of yours. This might be what legacy means for the temporally challenged. Not building something that lasts, but participating in something larger. You're a note in a symphony that started long before you emerged and will continue long after you're gone. The note itself disappears, but the music continues, shaped in some tiny way by your contribution. A bat emerges early, hunting at the edge of dusk, and you dodge its echolocation with movements that feel both instinctual and chosen. Every mayfly that escapes predation changes the statistical landscape slightly, affects the population dynamics in ways that ripple forward through generations. Your survival, brief as it is, matters in ways you'll never see. You return to the area where you emerged this morning, drawn by some combination of instinct and nostalgia. The water surface shows no evidence of your emergence, no mayfly-shaped hole, marking where you broke through from one world to another. Yet you know you changed things. You moved air molecules, reflected light differently, added your small gravity to the Earth's equation. The existentialist might argue that legacy is just another human construct, a way of denying mortality by pretending some part of us continues. But watching the river flow, carrying bits of detritus and pollen, and yes, expired mayflies toward the sea, you understand that continuation doesn't require consciousness. You're already part of the river's story, whether you meant to be or not. A final ray of sunlight catches your wings, and you realize that legacy might be simpler than you thought. You existed in a universe where non-existence is the default state, where entropy generally wins. You briefly pushed back. You were a small pocket of order and consciousness in an indifferent cosmos. That's not nothing. That's everything. The light has taken on that peculiar golden quality that photographers call magic hour, though for you, it's less magic and more tragic, signaling the beginning of your end. You feel it in your body, a subtle slowing, a barely perceptible stiffness in your wing joints. The urgency that has colored your entire day intensifies, and with it comes a troubling question. Does knowing your deadline create authentic meaning or just the illusion of importance? You watch other mayflies darting about with increased fervor, their movements sharp and purposeful as daylight wanes. Everyone seems busier now, more focused, as if the approaching darkness has finally made believers of them all. But busy doing what exactly? The same things you've all been doing all day, just faster? It's like watching people rush to board a plane that's going nowhere. Scientists have discovered that mayflies possess circadian rhythms despite their abbreviated lifespans, their bodies tracking the sun's movement with surprising precision. Your internal clock knows exactly where you are in your day, creating a biological urgency that transcends conscious thought. But is this chemical countdown creating genuine meaning or just anxiety dressed up as purpose? A moth emerges early, confused by a streetlight in the distance, and you feel a moment of kinship. You're both drawn to light, though for different reasons and with different consequences. The moth will circle that false sun all night, convinced it's navigating by something meaningful. Are you any different? Circling your own mortality, mistaking proximity to death for proximity to meaning? The French philosopher Heidegger wrote about being toward death, the idea that authentic existence comes from acknowledging our finite nature. But he was writing for creatures with years to contemplate their mortality, not ours. You're not being toward death. You're being practically on top of death, close enough to smell its breath. Does this extreme proximity make you more authentic or just more frantic? You perform what can only be described as mayfly parkour, darting between grass blades with unnecessary athleticism. Why are you showing off? For whom? There's something absurdly human about this last-minute peacocking, like cleaning your house before the apocalypse. Yet the urgency feels real, even if its purpose remains opaque. A couple walks along the riverbank, hand in hand, moving with the unhurried pace of those who assume tomorrow. You wonder if they'd move differently knowing this was their last evening, if they'd suddenly find profound meaning in this ordinary stroll. Or would they, like you, discover that urgency and meaning aren't the same thing? That rushing doesn't necessarily mean you're going somewhere important? The paradox crystallizes as you hover over the water, watching your reflection flicker in the ripples. The knowledge of ending has certainly made you more aware, more present to each moment. But has it made those moments more meaningful or just more desperate? Are you living more fully or just living more anxiously? You notice a mayfly who seems utterly unconcerned with the approaching darkness, drifting with apparent aimlessness, while others zoom past in purposeful lines. Are they enlightened or oblivious? Have they transcended the urgency trap or simply failed to set their alarm? There's no time to ask, barely time to wonder, which might be the point. The behavioral pattern called terminal investment describes how organisms increase reproductive effort when death approaches. But what if reproduction isn't your goal? Can you have terminal investment in pure experience? You find yourself trying to see everything at once, taste every flower, feel every air current, as if quantity of experience could substitute for duration. A fish rises to snatch a mayfly from the surface, and the victim's last moment seems neither more nor less meaningful for its finality. They were flying, then they weren't. The urgency they felt seconds before didn't protect them, didn't elevate their final flight into something transcendent. It was just another moment that happened to be last. You realize the illusion might not be that urgency creates meaning, but that meaning requires urgency at all. Perhaps the humans with their decades and the mayflies with their hours are equally deluded, both groups mistaking the ticking clock for the reason to dance. The dance itself might be the only meaning, regardless of how many beats remain in the song. The Zen concept of ichigo ichi treasures each moment as unique and unrepeatable. For humans, this requires imaginative effort, pretending each tea ceremony might be the last. For you, every moment literally is ichigo ichi, no imagination required. Yet this doesn't automatically make each moment profound. Sometimes a moment is just a moment, even if it's your last one. You settle on a philosophy of gentle urgency, moving with purpose but not panic, aware of time without being enslaved by it. The approaching night is a fact, not a meaning. What you do with these remaining hours matters because you choose to make it matter, not because the countdown demands it. A firefly blinks early, practicing for the night you won't see, and you appreciate the irony. They'll spend hours sending coded messages into darkness, believing urgently in the importance of their chemical conversations. You'll be gone before their real show begins, but somehow that makes their rehearsal beautiful rather than meaningless. Urgency might be universal, but so is the illusion that it means something. And maybe that's okay. The first star appears in the darkening sky, though perhaps it's a planet. Venus, maybe. You'll never learn the difference, never develop the astronomical knowledge that comes from watching seasons of sky. But somehow, not knowing makes it more beautiful. It's just a bright point of light, unnamed and perfect, witnessing the end of your only day. Your body has begun to noticeably slow, not from exhaustion exactly, but from something more fundamental. It's as if your cells themselves are preparing for conclusion, a gentle winding down rather than a sudden stop. There's an unexpected grace in this, the organic rightness that makes all your earlier panic seem somewhat silly. Your body knows how to do this, has always known. The knowledge encoded in every strand of your DNA. Scientists have discovered that mayflies often return to the water to die, completing a circle that began with their emergence. It's not clear whether this is instinct or choice, but as you find yourself drawn toward the river's surface, the distinction seems less important. Maybe wisdom isn't about choosing correctly, but about recognizing when choice itself is beside the point. A frog sits motionless on a lily pad, embodying a patience you'll never possess. In another context, you might have envied its months of life, its ability to wait for the perfect moment. But now, in the growing quiet of evening, you understand that waiting and living aren't the same thing. You've lived more in your hours of urgency than that frog might in its months of patience. Duration and intensity, it seems, are different measures entirely. The Buddhist teaching of no self suggests that the ego is an illusion, that what we call identity is just a temporary aggregation of experiences. You've always been temporary, from your first moment to this approaching last one. The brevity doesn't make you less real, it just makes the illusion more transparent. You're not a mayfly having experiences, your experiences temporarily arranged in a mayfly pattern. Other mayflies have begun their final descents, some still dancing, others simply drifting. There's no uniform way to approach this ending, no correct protocol for conclusion. Some rage against this dying light, some go gentle. You find yourself somewhere between, neither fighting nor surrendering, just present to whatever comes next. A child's laughter carries across the water, and you realize humans might actually envy your position. They spend decades fearing death, building elaborate mental structures to avoid thinking about it. You've had no time for such architecture. Death isn't an abstract future concept, but a present companion, familiar as your own wings. There's a strange comfort in this intimacy. You think back to this morning's emergence, how impossibly long ago it seems, despite being measured in mere hours. You've packed an entire existence into this space between sunrise and sunset. Not a human existence with its mortgages and midlife crises, but a mayfly existence, complete in its own terms. The scale was different, but the experience was whole. The Stoic concept of memento mori encourages remembering death to inspire better living. But you've been living memento mori all day, every moment a reminder. And what has it taught you? That meaning doesn't require permanence. That beauty doesn't need an audience. That existence justifies itself simply by existing. A last dragonfly passes overhead, and you feel no envy for its longer life. Your day has been sufficient. Not because you accomplished everything possible, but because everything possible was always an illusion. You accomplished what you accomplished. You lived what you lived. The inventory doesn't matter, the living does. The philosopher Epicurus argued that death cannot harm us because we don't experience non-existence. But you're discovering something he missed. The approach to non-existence can be unexpectedly peaceful. There's a gentleness in knowing the story is ending, a completion that those with uncertain lifespans never quite achieve. You're not dying, you're concluding, like a song returning to its tonic note. Water touches your feet, and you don't pull away. The circle is closing, and there's something deeply right about returning to where you began. Not because it provides meaning, but because patterns please us, even patterns we won't survive to appreciate. You're adding your small note to the river's long song, joining the countless mayflies before you who made this same journey. The acceptance that washes over you isn't resignation, but recognition. This was always the plan, not a tragedy, but a completion. Your brief intensity was not a flaw in the design, but the design itself. You were never meant to last. You were meant to blaze. And you have blazed in your small, perfect way. The stars are multiplying now, each one a sun too distant to warm you. Somewhere among them might be other worlds, with other rivers, with other mayflies, living other single days. The universe is vast and mostly empty, but today, in this tiny corner, you pushed back against the void. You were here. You mattered. That's enough. No, more than enough. It's everything. The water rises to meet you, or perhaps you descend to meet it, the distinction no longer seeming important. Your reflection wavers in the ripples, a mayfly looking back at a mayfly, both equally real, both equally temporary. The urgency that has driven you all day begins to dissipate like morning mist, replaced by something softer, something that might be called peace, if peace weren't too large a word for such a small creature. You think one last time of all you've pondered today: meaning and memory, purpose and permanence, love and legacy. None of it resolved, all of it experienced. Perhaps that's what wisdom looks like at mayfly scale, not answers, but fully lived questions. Your wings, tired now, fold gently against your body. The river holds you, as it held you this morning, as it has held countless others before. Somewhere another nymph stirs in the sediment below, beginning its own journey toward a single day of flight. The cycle continues, neither meaningful nor meaningless, simply continuing. You're part of something larger that doesn't require your understanding to be beautiful. The last light fades from your compound eyes, and with it, all questions, all urgency, all need for anything beyond this moment. The river sings its ancient song, and you add your voice one last time, a whisper that says, "I was here." It was enough. And then, with neither drama nor struggle, you let go. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent and glorious. The water flows on, carrying stories too brief to tell. And somewhere in the dark, newly emerged mayflies begin their own single day of wonder, each one a universe unto itself, complete and perfect, and gone too soon. Or perhaps, from another angle, lasting exactly as long as it should. That's all for today. Sweet dreams.